and I wanted to be sure that interpreters also hear me. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to one of the most important sessions of the Astana International Forum, when we'll be looking on issues of securing the future and advancing economic stability in a shifting world. I think this is the critical question that many leaders, policymakers, as well as the citizens of our countries ask ourselves, where we are going for. What could be done to advance economic development, economic growth, and how to ensure it's sustainable in the future. I think everyone is recognizing that we are going in uncertain world now, and really shifting priorities, and there is a lot of tension created around the globe. It includes crises like diseases, it includes geopolitical crises, it also includes changing in traditional policies and also the shifting the priorities and markets around the globe. In this regard, these changes have a great impact, of course, on the overall world, but most importantly on those countries which are still in transition or developing world. So very important how we ensure that our focus on providing finance for development, using different instruments across the globe, helping mostly these developing countries to be resilient, to keep economic resilience going forward. I have a good lesson from the previous session. When the moderator was talking a lot, then we have less time for the panelists. So what I wanted to do right now, first of all, I wanted to, I don't need to repeat my name, right? So it's on the screen. Everybody can read in this audience. Okay, very good. So with further to do, I suggest we start this session. And I'm really honored to invite Ms. Maha Al-Kuwari, the General Manager of the Doha Forum, for the welcoming remarks.
Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to join you today at the Astana International Forum, an esteemed platform that continues to demonstrate the value of multilateral dialogue and visionary leadership in a rapidly changing world. In this spirit, the Doha Forum shares a deep commitment to the diplomacy, dialogue, and diversity as essential pathways and to building bridges, advancing shared prosperities, and shaping a more resilient global future. Our world stands at a critical crossroads. Geopolitical fragmentation, the enduring effects of the pandemic, widening inequalities, and ongoing disruption to global supply chains are testing the resilience of economic worldwide. While advanced economies may have greater capacity to absorb such disruptions, many developing and least developed countries remain deeply vulnerable, threatening their resilience and undermining their recovery. In the light of these pressing realities, securing a stable and inclusive future demands solutions that are innovative, inclusive, and mostly important, coordinated. In collaboration with Qatar Fund for Development, this panel brings together diverse perspective and expertise to explore practical solutions to today's global challenges, focusing on innovative finance models, strengthening international partnership, and laying the groundwork for a more inclusive and reliant economic future. At the Doha Forum, we believe the power of diplomacy and dialogue to catalyze change. By convening policymaker, business leader, and civil society, we strive to forge new pathways to peace and prosperity. Whether bridging advisories, connecting North and South, or evaluating youth voices, we create conversations that transforms divisions into collaboration. Through partnerships with more than over 50 institutions, we draw on global expertise across fields. Last year, the Doha Forum welcomed more than 5,000 participants for over 160 countries. This December, we look forward to hosting our 23rd edition, once again transforming dialogue into outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are reminded that resilience is not built in isolation. but through collaboration, innovation, and shared vision. By connecting ideas, institutions, and individuals, we help build ecosystems where diplomacy thrives and economic stability can be restored. I invite you all to engage fully in today's discussion and join us also in Doha Forum on the 6th and 7th of December as we explore the theme Justice in Action Beyond Promises to Progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inspiring, welcoming remark. I want to also say thank you to the Doha Forum and Qatar Fund for Development for being organizers of this session. Let me introduce our distinguished panelists. I'm really thrilled to introduce the people who have a great expertise and experience in the development agenda and also great visionary participating in various events across the globe. Let me start from His Excellency Timur Suleimanov, who is the Governor of National Bank of Kazakhstan. The next panelist is Dr. Antonella Bassani, the Vice President of the World Bank for Europe and Central Asia. Next is Ms. Roda Al-Naimi, Manager of the Investment Department at Qatar Fund for Development. And of course, we cannot pass away the private sector. So Ms. Marie-Hélène Berard, Independent Director, Member of the Board of Directors at Byterek Joint Stock Companies. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really look forward to your insightful thoughts, your vision to share. Perhaps to start the discussion, I have a few questions to participants. And so that's what we will try to hear from them. And I hope we will have some time in the end, perhaps to have some questions also from the floor. Your Excellency Timur Suleimanov, from your perspective, how is the geopolitical instability and inflation pressure impacting middle power economies like Kazakhstan? Can you share your views on this important challenge?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mikhnyev. Thank you very much to everyone. I guess I would like to welcome everyone as a representative of the host country. I also extend my very warm thanks to the Doha Forum. Thank you for organizing this event for us. You know that Kazakhstan and Qatar share very good strategic relationship with each other, and that goes also to the events such as this one. And of course, Ms. Antonella Bassani, she is a very, very good friend of our country, and she's very passionate about Central Asia in general, and Kazakhstan in particular. So thank you very much. And of course, all the other panelists, I do hope that today's meeting is as exciting as it is fruitful and constructive. Well, thank you very much for your answer, and I think the couple of things that you mentioned, stability and and inflation. Of course, inflation is the opposite of stability. Basically, when you talk about well, let me start with stability first. I guess this is the word: instability, turmoil, volatility. Those are the words of modern age, especially starting April 2nd this year, when the new era of trade regime or world trade order, I would say, was commenced from the United States, and we're still seeing the profound changes in the global trade, investment, financial flows, with very, very deep ripples on all the markets, financial markets first and foremost, of course, energy, as well as, of course, very, very real economy changes into the logistical and supply chains. Well, Kazakhstan. So I'll speak for Kazakhstan. I think first and foremost, Kazakhstan is no, we're not that prone to the trade barriers or to the newly established trade regimes, because even though the United States is a very important partner of ours, but our trade is about 4.2 billion, very even, and I think we actually run deficit of about 200 million with respect to the United States, and 97% of our exports to that country are exempt. So basically, it's not the trade that is of concern to us. It's the secondary effect effects that change the dynamics on the oil and gas markets that affect our oil-driven economy. Oil still accounts for about, I think, 51% of our exports and about 35% of our budget revenues. Really, really big amount. And it's not promising to go away, because given the recent expansion at Tengiz fields and further exploration and production, the economy is growing. Non-oil economy is growing. There is no doubt about that. But oil economy is also booming in Kazakhstan. So basically, the percentage of oil and gas within the structure of GDP, structure of trade, and as I've mentioned, budget revenues pretty much is not changing that rapidly. So of course, oil price and China's economy being one of the largest consumers of oil, if they start to stall, and then it means that the demand for oil is lower, and of course, definitely, it is going to mean lower prices for us, and that's a number one concern for countries like Kazakhstan. One of our key macroeconomic parameters is price of oil. So basically, whenever the government thinks of future year's budget or macroeconomic forecast, the first figure that you have to come up with is the oil price. And now, which takes me now to the second one. The second one is, of course, the exchange rate, and it's very closely linked with the inflation. So, of course, there are a lot of pro-inflationary factors as of now. We're seeing that there is turmoil in value, in supply chains, in value-added chains, and that normally means supply shocks on the supply side. In addition to that, one of our key strategic partners is Russia. So we import about 31% of our imports from Russian Federation, and they have pretty high inflation as of now. And plus, given the potential stabilization in terms of military operation, the ruble is very strong at the moment. So it's about 79, 78 point something. Even though it's not market quoted, but it's very strong. So basically, it adds to the inflation importing from one of our key trading partners. So, in addition to external factors, of course, there is an ongoing tariff liberalization program, petroleum prices liberalization program, and it all adds into the mix of inflation. So we have a very unique combination of factors. We have a high growth of about 6% for the first 4 months, but at the same time we have relatively high inflation of 10.7. One thing that I would focus on, and I think it is really very well stated in the topic of today's session, is stability. So when we talk about stability, stability is something real, something you can feel, something very tangible. So when all the governments, whether it's small countries, middle powers, or great powers, think about economic development, they always have to think in real terms. And real terms means something, in nominal terms, less inflation. Because real means this is something that our population can feel. So it doesn't have to be about statistical growth. You can have very high statistical growth, but which is not evenly distributed across the strata of the population, or across the regions, across the towns and the society. So basically, the word real has to be the word of the day, because that means that this is something that everyone can feel, everyone can have in his or her hand. Exactly. So that's why inflation battling is very important for Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much. I think it's great introduction of Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think I'm grateful for drawing the picture and how Kazakhstan is actually positioned that in this picture and what challenges you are facing. I think when we're going for the second round, you will tell us about what policies you will be thinking important for your country to address these challenges. But let me switch now to Dr. Antonella Bassani. Dr. Bassani, you work for the global institution, which is probably quite unique. I don't can think about such global institution in addition to the World Bank Group. So from your perspective, what are the major development challenges for global economy you see most critical for policymakers to address?
Thank you very much, Andrei. And let me start by saying that I'm delighted to attend this event, which is really central to the World Bank Group mission of ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity on a livable planet. And it's an honor for me to return to Kazakhstan to attend the Astana International Forum. And I want to thank Governor Suleimanov for the government's really efforts and initiative to hold what is one of the most important global events where we can discuss economic and social issues. So thank you very much. And I'm also very happy to be in a session which has so many distinguished women speakers. So thank you. Yes. So the first quarter of this century has really shown an overall picture of slowing growth and rising volatility and uncertainty. And it's interesting that since 1990, only 27 middle-income countries have transitioned to high-income status. Many countries have moved from low income to middle income, but very few middle-income countries have moved to high-income status. And of these 27, 10 were in the Europe and Central Asia region, many of which were really pulled by the EU accession process. So the first decade of these last 25 years saw global growth rates of about 5.9%, which was a very good growth. But now, 2025, 2026, growth rate in the Europe and Central Asia region are projected at about 2.5%, less than half than that. So growth is slowing, and also a whole new series or additional series of challenges, which are often overlapping, is facing countries. In addition to persistent volatility and increasing uncertainty, of course, indebtedness is higher. For instance, external debt per capita in middle-income countries has been increasing in the last 10 years, which gives less room for maneuver. Financing for development is lower. FDI, for instance, to developing economies today is half of its level 25 years ago. Official development assistance is also declining. Trade restrictions are increasing, and in fact, trade restrictions were 5 times more in 2024 than in the 2010 decade. And this was even before the most recent wave of tariff measures. And of course, we have climate-related challenges, natural disaster, geopolitical tensions, which also have implications and impacts on global value chains and economic growth. But there are also enormous opportunities. And I think the Kazakhstan and the Central Asia region also shows that despite very many challenges, countries also and still face enormous opportunities and potential for growth and development. And this often requires a rethinking of the economic growth model of this country to adjust to the very changing, fast-changing global context.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Round of applause, please. It's actually fascinating what you said, and I think it's a good segue to our other speaker, Ms. Al-Noayami, who will, I appreciate if you give your perspective of global economic disruption for the shaping the financing choices of low countries. And actually, in the recently Qatar for Development really becoming a great player in the financing and responding through innovative and impact-driven funding models. So could you give a little bit of light from your perspective, how these problems could be solved, what problems you see, and how the Qatar for Development could respond to them?
Thank you so much. Actually, one of the key challenges you have highlighted just now when it comes to declining of ODA and also the conditions of the least developed countries specifically, because these kind of challenges are not just a challenge to them. They are facing it as a reality every day. And the way the fund looks at these kind of challenges is a way of an opportunity where we can enhance development finance. And development finance in terms of how to attract different areas when it comes to financing for development in blended finance and the different aspects. But we have to also understand that we are not just faced of these kind of, let's say, challenges, but also it's a triple crisis, since debt is also unsustainable debt levels are always pushing the LDCs into a new wave of distress, and also hard-won gains in health, education, and livelihoods are also being reserved. One of the, let's say, aspect is the paradox of global capital when it comes to the reserve sitting and not actually being utilized to the different of building schools or developing education and so on, and also the distrust as well. Trust in global financial architecture is actually eroding, as you just noted as well in your remarks just now, especially when institutions are seen to work for the stable and credit worthy of it, while the vulnerable are actually being left behind. So the fund has shifted its way towards the investment specifically currently, because we no longer can continue with the normal grants. We actually focus now on actually how to join forces, whether it's a capital, private capital or public capital together. In a way, we come as a de-risker, and also to ensure that in fragile context where private sector is a bit reluctant to come in and to actually focus on the different areas where we can come in to help out as a public institution. My question actually is focused as well to the audience and the panelists as well, and more of a question that we should actually ask ourselves is how to unlock capital that is not just available but also accessible to those who need it the most. How do we design finance that is not just innovative but adaptive to fragile and evolving context? And also, how above all as well, how do we align every dollar spent in public or private with longer term sustainability and exclusivity as well? Looking at the different contexts, especially with the least developed countries, we are part of the Doha Program of Action, where we focusing as well to help out in the 5 tracks towards this. And the LDC actually is one of the conferences that actually said it. We cannot be fragmented in terms of how can we put on aid. We have to be more focused towards investment, towards development finance, and how to attract other players and not the normal as well. And looking at the different contexts, we are faced with refugee context, we are faced with the different aspects. Refugee camps, when you go and visit them as well, you see that they are as well doing their own raskas of actually borrowing together, making sure that they are also empowered in terms of how can they do best to their families, but within the context of it. So the question is not, it's not about the challenges or the crisis that they are facing. How can we actually be there to help them access the financing and not let, for example, capital still sitting in some reserves and so on? It has to be utilized. The beauty of development finance and the financing aspect, it's a revolving scheme where you can reinvest, you can actually enhance job creation, you can enhance anything, but still the capital can always return and also still be utilized for other margins as well. Thank you so much.
Great, and it's fantastic. A round of applause is great. And I think for the audience to remember is exactly that value addition of development financing. It's not only about money, it's different values. It's the money bringing for development. Great points. I'll go to Ms. Berard with a question from her perspective. What are the main risk perception from the private sector which prevent probably from investing in emerging markets?
Thank you. We'd like to begin by saying that my first mission to Kazakhstan was in 1989, so before the independence. So maybe some of you were not born yet. When I see the results and the development of your country, Mr. Governor, I'm more than impressed. A great admiration for what you have accomplished. Thank you also to the Doha Forum to be partner and to have organized this panel. It's a great idea to put us among ourselves, and I would directly go to try to answer your question. So when we speak of private sector, we have to understand, are we speaking of small and medium-sized companies, or are we speaking of large and international companies? So when it goes to small and medium companies, the choice is very quick and very easy. Either small and medium companies are subcontractors of large companies and they only follow the large companies. It's a bad thing or a good thing, but they have no choice. They don't go by themselves. When small and medium companies are totally independent and go by themselves, going to an emerging market requires a lot of criteria. One of them is what we would call stability, which is a word today that we are always attaching to uncertainty. And I would like to elaborate 1 second. We can have stability and instability without having uncertainty. It's two different notions, a little bit complex to explain, but I think in the changing system that we are now facing, we have the feeling that everything is changing every day and we can't make prognosis, which is not totally true. It's just a change. We have to establish new criteria. We have to use artificial, let's say, EA to have all the data of all the changes. And I'm quite sure that within a few, maybe less than a few years, we shall have new criteria to explain those changes that today look to us absolutely without any rationality. So let's go back to the main criteria. For a company to go in an emerging market, the first thing is resilient supply chains. The second thing is energy sovereignty, then digital infrastructure and robustness of this infrastructure, and institutional adaptability, as I said, which is facing all the changes that we are now knowing. Because what we know now is that, again, on stability, what we know is that it's not any longer normal cycles. It's new changes, and let's say the private sector needs to have a certain trust and a certain, let's say, hope that it will not be, it will not die within, the investments will not be totally a bankruptcy within a few times. So we have to, especially in emerging market, but not only in emerging market, we have to give a certain trust to the private sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Look, I believe we kind of have heard quite a few views which are not different, but very much going into the same direction and really helping us understand what's the issues we are facing in this changing world. And from the private sector perspective, particularly certainty, predictability of policies is really important to make then changes, to invest and to create more jobs, which is very important because many economies which succeeded, they were driven by the private sector led growth and private sector jobs. So with this, let me go for the second part of our session, which after we draw all these challenges and identify them, let's go for the policies and strategies actually for addressing these challenges and securing as we can the future and advancing economic growth in our changing world. So my question to Mr. Suleimanov would be mostly sharing his experience, which could be useful probably for other Central Asia countries. It's what we can see here, you can see what fiscal and monetary policies have proven most effective in addressing the challenges you already mentioned answering your first question. Do you have some good example or you see some lessons learned that could be equally important for other countries in the region?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mikhnov. Yes, well, Kazakhstan is in many ways similar to Central Asian countries, but in many ways we're very different from our brotherly nations around us. And I think first and foremost is, of course, abundance of natural resource. And that's oil and metals. And that in itself, of course, is an opportunity, and it also may become a curse. So basically, other countries, they have to go without it. And it's much more difficult because you don't have the same fiscal revenues, you cannot do the same sort of finance and state finance and public finance into infrastructure, human capital, whatever, you name it. But at the same time, it makes you agile. It makes you more adjustable to changing external conditions. So basically, yes, we are similar, and given the oil fund, given the big international reserves, we are very much different. So basically, I think the key problem for Kazakhstan, one of the key challenges for Kazakhstan was actually to take this difference away, to try and live as if the national oil fund or the hot oil money do not exist. That is the challenge, and I don't think we were pretty successful in not overcoming, but living with the challenge. But sometimes it can catch up with you. There's always this desire. There's always this intention. There's a huge pile of money sitting somewhere outside, invested into various assets, various jurisdictions. Why not take it back and invest it within your country? When basically a lot of people think like that. But I think this is a little bit short-sighted. You can do that for huge groundbreaking projects of the national importance. But if you go ahead and do it as a regular injection, an injection above the very basic fiscal needs, it will become a drug. What do we call when you have an athlete which artificially enhances his or her ability? You can run faster, you can lift heavier, but once the drug is out of your system, you're back to normal. And since you were not training without the drug, you were training with the drug, your body is not ready for that, and therefore you will start lagging behind. So one of the key structural challenges for Kazakhstan economic policy decision making is, of course, trying to live without the oil money. And I think we were pretty successful. The National Oil Fund is there. We haven't spent it. But again, we're making very sensible decisions in terms of increasing Republican budget's own revenues, non-oil revenues, such as VAT, which was inevitable. And I think we're on the right track. And but once again, I can speak about these policies for longer than I'm allowed to. But I think key structural, key political, economic, when we talk about economic policy level, is we need to live as if the national oil fund is not existent. Then we become as agile as Uzbeks, Kyrgyz, and other brotherly nations around us, which are used to live without the hot and easily accessible oil money. And then we'll be on par with them, and we can compete even when the oil era is over. So this is what we need to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. When I was preparing for this session, actually, it's good, Mr. Suleimanov, that you really give a broader perspective. But I know also in your capacity as a governor of the National Bank here, you're putting a lot of efforts to ensure consistency between monetary and fiscal policies, right? And I think this is despite like oil revenues, that's kind of one of the issues that may be probably useful for other Central Asian countries, how to make it going hand of hand rather than in different direction, right? Then you cannot achieve what you're putting as economic development goals.
Well, we're not the most exemplary jurisdiction in this respect. We have our ups and downs, and there are some parts within the fiscal policy that are pro-inflationary, and maybe we're doing something that the government would like to see differently. But yes, Mr. Mikhnov, you're very right. We have it's not coordination, because I mean it's difficult to coordinate policies that have different objectives in mind. Both policies have the same objective, long-term objective, which is welfare of the people, welfare of the country. But fiscal policy is doing it right here, right now, with the money that I have. Take the money from this, give the money to that. Our policy is neutral in terms of growth. Low inflation, stability in the changing world, stability in the changing environment, and that's why we have slightly different policy objectives. But again, we have very open-minded dialogue with the government, and this is something that I don't find very often in other jurisdictions, because I speak with my colleagues, governors from other banks, and we as governors of the national central banks tend to criticize the government. They're spending too much, they're not taking too enough, and they're doing something too fast. I do not buy it. I mean, they have to do it, and if the governor of the National Bank is put in the place of Minister of Finance, Minister of Economy, or Prime Minister, he or she would be doing the same thing. So it's a never existing dilemma. You just need to be open-minded. You have to be very precise, very constructive, and don't have short-term. And one of the key problems is short-termism. Yes. You have to have at least medium-term interest of your country in mind, not just let me do this within the next half a year. I'll be a hero, and whatever happens next is not my job. No. Once you have the mid-term interest of your country in mind, then all of the differences between central bank and the government tend to disappear.
Excellent. Excellent point. So we hope we all have vision and should have a vision which will drive our actions. Dr. Bassani, if I may ask you from your perspective, what policymakers across the globe, but also in Central Asia, should prioritize as policy reform in the current unstable world? And of course it's like big 1 billion question, but I hope you can answer it in a few minutes.
So in the discussion we typically have with policymakers, we tend to encourage the thinking that the growth model of the past may not necessarily automatically work for the future because of all the changes and all the new circumstances, and in that respect we encourage a new game plan for policy and reforms. And while every country needs to have a very specific approach, and one size does not fit all, we also have learned from successful countries that there are 4 areas of reform and policies that may need to be considered. First is what we call moving from investment to infusion to innovation. We call it the 3 I's. What does it mean? Typically countries invest in infrastructure and human capital, and then that is critical in an early phases of development. It's actually foundational for any economic growth, and it's very important. But once that level of investment is achieved, in order to grow further, you need to move to a second and third stage, what we call infusion, which basically means integrating foreign technologies and best practices into the production system. We call it infusion. And then innovation, where countries not only adopt best practices and foreign technology, but innovate themselves. And this is where you see where the biggest productivity growth happen. So that's the first area of reforms, because the government have a role to encourage that process of infusion and innovation. The second area, of course, is supporting a dynamic private sector, which often requires increasing domestic competition or improving the governance of public enterprises, really providing a plain level field where the most innovative, the most dynamic firms can develop and grow. And there again, governments have a very critical role to play. Third is, of course, continuing to develop human capital in order to make the workforce the most productive as possible. And there is where investment in knowledge, skills, and health are very important, and where, for instance, with new technologies, new skills are so critical, including digital skills. And fourth and final is where in several countries in the region, in the Europe and Central Asia region where I work, we see the need for a transition to lower energy intensity and lower emissions, because many of the economies in the region are very, very energy intensive, and by reducing such intensity would make their enterprises and company and private sector more efficient and more resilient for future growth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just noticed for myself that your last point is very well resonate what Mr. Suleimanov was saying, that in some countries where you have like natural resource endowment, you can think that this is like the way going forward. But in case for these countries, particular low energy strategies and policies should be the priority for sustained economic development for, going forward. Let me go to Ms. Al-Nuaimi. With the question about, again, the Qatar Fund for Development. What you see like a main strength and challenges in adapting financing, different instruments as financing, is actually to maximize the outcomes of this financing. You already started alluding to that, but probably give us a little bit more about your tools that we are using.
Thank you so much. In terms of the tools, the fund actually focuses on multiple tools, either concessional loan or bonds or equity, or also looking at blended finance as a tool. But in terms of my first discussions, I focused a bit on the blended finance, but blended finance as well, we don't see it as a silver bullet. We see it as an enabler, actually, strategically, in terms of allowing us to go beyond funding projects and also to shaping a market and also scaling innovation and de-risking development ambition. Our journey is always going to be ongoing on these kind of aspects, but looking at why QFFD and also what kind of strength that we have. For example, QFFD actually is a flexible, has a flexible capital and also political neutrality to play a catalytical role when it comes to in high risk and also underserved markets. Our positioning allows us actually to enter spaces where commercial capital is hesitant, to design financing structure that de-risk private participation in fragile or complex environment. We have embedded, as I mentioned, concessional lending instrument and also risk-sharing facility and also first loss structures into our operational model. Our concessional policy actually for loans offers a tailored terms such as starting from a zero interest rate up to 2 to 4 depending on the country, and it's always case by case. We try to look at the country needs first and also not to deplete them when we are, for example, offering such tools. We work with the country to actually have a position to repay and so on. We try to actually ensure that there is a high grant element as well in our loans, just to also be abide in the development and ODA collaborations. We also look at how to ensure as well their debt sustainability and also across diverse country context. We also try to cooperate result framework, and specifically we are SDG aligned. Our result framework focuses on our project to actually show us impact on the level of the SDGs and on the level of the indicators. Having these kind of, let's say, focuses actually gives the fund advantage in terms of how can we resource our mobilization towards this, towards development project. But also we are always facing different challenges. For example, designing a blended structure that actually attracts private sector into the different contexts that we are serving in fragile state and so on. And you alluded as well on this aspect. Having a development integrity remains a complex aspect in many LDCs, and also the investment climate is uncertain, and concessionality as well must be carefully deliberated to avoid market distortion and also while maintaining consensuality as well. Despite as well the tools available, uptake of blended finance as well in frontier markets is still limited, also addressing perceived risk, ensuring pipeline quality, and standardizing performance matrix is always a challenge as well as a development agency. But we try our best to actually have solution for these challenges, and there is always the identifying the risk in any investment opportunity we do, and also have a mitigation plan as well. But the focus is to help the country where the help is needed, and also making sure it's tailored to the country that we are serving.
Fantastic. I think a round of applause. It's very good. Making a tailoring support where it's needed, when it's needed is really important. Let me go to Ms. Berar with the question is like from your perspective, you see any changes in the investment behavior of the private sector while we have this shifting world? Is it changing? How it's contributing to more economic stabilities?
It's a hard question because I see the changes. I'm not sure that those changes are going to economic stability. But the changes I see, we know that we are now working in what I can call geo-economic fragmentation. We know that every private company, large and medium, knows that the trade and the world trade has been changing. We know that institutional organizations like WTO, which we tried for years and years to use in the best interest of everybody, is nearly dead today. We know what is happening with the rise of customs and tariffs from the United States. We don't know exactly where we are going to end, but we know that this is a trouble. So the private sector has to keep in mind the geo-economy fragmentation. The second shift, the main shift, is, and the World Bank said it also, is a green transition. The capital has now can't do anything else than invest in less consuming of energy investments, and it is a total allocation of the means towards what we know renewable energy, critical minerals, and of course low carbon industrial process. There is no private investment today which will not take these changes in consideration. And the next one is, the last one I think, is as a change, is a new need of technology and digital sovereignty. We are totally in the world of digitalization, and there is no way to escape. And on the contrary, we have to be the best. I mean, each of us tries to be the best in this new digital world, and this is one shift that we have to keep in mind.
Fantastic. So, round of applause. Never escape, but embrace the challenges, right? Exactly. Look, what I wanted to do right now, I have like plenty of questions, of course, I'm interested in. But I would like the audience to have probably a couple of questions from the floor using presence of our participants having here and having like 10 minutes left before we enter the session. Are there any questions that you would like to ask? Please then name the person you want to ask. Do we have a microphone to hand over? Yes, yes. The mic.
I would like to ask anyone here, in your opinion, how might current social media consumption trends among teens shape future consumer markets and economic models?
Do you want to ask a particular person? Oh, you want to answer. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
You have no idea how powerful the youth voice actually. Now a lot of governments is actually adding youth to their ministries, adding the youth to the different aspects, but looking at consumer perspective and looking at how social media could play a role, and especially youth, it is one bad review, for example, on a certain aspect, a certain product, it's either make it or kill it, for example. So this kind of aspect is really, it has a voice, and it's a very and strong, powerful tool, in my opinion. So.
Ms. Berard, please.
Yes, it was not exactly your question, but let me add to what has been said. Social media is so essential, but keep in mind that all the use you make of social media means data. And those data are used. And it's trillion of, I can't give the number, of huge amount of data which are now concerning each of us. And all of us, we are going to be modeled according to the data which are now collected by great, let's say, companies or institutions, maybe governments. So all the use we make on social medias are going to be our, let's say, a way for others to influence us.
Thank you for
Please, could you move the microphone there?
First of all, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for their insightful presentations, and thank AIF for bringing us together today. And my question goes to Madam Antonella Bassani. Could you please tell us which regional organization is quite successful in coping with all economic challenges and having this advanced economic stability in these days, if there exist, of course, and what are the secrets of their success? Thank you.
I wouldn't say that there is one specific organization. I think, in my personal view, all organizations, and I'm referring, for instance, to international financial institutions, need to work together, because given these challenges and given the opportunities that we discussed also, we can't think anymore of very small individual intervention or project or program. We need to think big. We need to think about big transformation, big economic transformation. And to do that, to implement those, countries need the unified support and coordinated approach of all, I think, international financial institutions. And this is why the World Bank Group, we really try to work very closely with our sister partner organizations. And I, for instance, am very happy to indicate that in the region that I cover, Europe and Central Asia, we have a very strong partnership with, and I will mention some acronyms now, or the full name of the organization. I'm very proud of this. We have several joint programs that we support for countries with the Asian Development Bank, the AIIB, the EBRD, the EIB, the Saudi Investment Fund, Kuwaiti funds, Arab funds, the Council of Europe Development Bank, and I could go on and on and on. Because by pulling together our financial capacity, our technical and knowledge, we can best help our country rather than going solo. And I think, therefore, that rather than one single organization that is successful, is the combination of working together that I think can maximize success for our client countries.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As we're coming to the closing of our session, I would like to ask all four panelists, just for 1 minute, tell us either main takeaway they take from their session, or they would like audience to take away from this session. Just one thing to conclude. And of course, Mr. Limenov, you're in a difficult position. You're always first to respond while others are still thinking.
Well, yeah, if we are to take the single one takeaway, well, I think you shouldn't lose the big picture. And the big picture in all the economic policies, social policies, technological policies, human capital, or whatever, you shouldn't lose sight of the big picture and I wouldn't call it the end game, but the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is always welfare of the citizens. It's not where you stand in international comparisons. It's not where you're ranking in I don't know, UN, World Banks, IMFs, or some other ranking, some other institutions ranking. It's not about absolute figures of your GDP growth, GDP, foreign investment, or whatever. It always has to come down to welfare of the citizens. The real incomes, real wages, distribution, the similarity of regions to one another in terms of hosts of economic and social indicators. So don't lose the sight of the end game. Always think about that in whatever policy you try to formulate. Thank you.
Fantastic. Dr. Bassani.
So I think we talked about shifts, we talked about challenges, and we talked about uncertainties and volatility. But one of us also talked about embrace the challenges. And I think this is the moment for many countries to embrace the challenges, because change always brings us with new window of opportunity to grow and to develop.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I want to build actually on you, specifically on the challenges, and also knowing, as I said, tailoring is really key, and addressing the different countries that we serve is really important, and getting to know them is really important, and making sure that the development projects or the humanitarian assistance we provide is always need to be tailored to that country, to make sure that you are, at the end of the day, you're not depleting them with aid, you're actually helping them out, and actually you are joining them in actually reaching prosperity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Berar.
I would like to say the main point that is needed for success in an economy, I will be very brief because I could last 1 hour on that, is predictability in legislation, regulatory predictability. fair and transparent institutions, judicial independence, independence of the justice, equal treatment between local and foreign investors, and sometimes the need of an anti-corruption policy. And I think that in Kazakhstan, what again I've been able to see all the changes, you are happy enough to fulfill the main criteria. So there is very good reasons for foreign investors to be happy and to come more and more to this country. And if you allow me a last word addressing the governor, I've been spending 15 years in the French Ministry of Finances, saying exactly what you have said about the necessity to preserve reserves and not to spend reserves for the ordinary expenses, but to keep the reserves for the future. So I'm totally with you on this line.
Thank you. So thank you again, all the panelists, really appreciate, but also thank you to all of you of being here with us during the session and making this session a success. Thank you.